and I work for 2 remote sensing companies. And in the sideline, I like to work on Drupal projects, especially when they deal with spatial data. And that is exactly what this talk is going to be about. I'm going to present you Cartaro. It's a Drupal web content management system to put geospatial data online. So here is the overview of what I'm going to talk about. First, what is geospatial data? Then the components that Cartaro is built of. Then how to download and install Cartaro. Then I will try to give an overview of the relation between content, layers and maps and how all that is organized within Cartaro. And then we will try to make a small demo to put a map on your website. And then we dig into the code. We will have a look at the field type from Cartaro, the field type that actually contains the geospatial data. Then we will also look at the layer types and layers as they are defined in Cartaro. How to define your maps, all by code. And at the end, how to print a map also by code. And we will conclude the talk also by visiting a web application that is built with Cartaro. So what is geospatial data? A city, for example, is geospatial data because a city has a name. You can give it other fields like what is the size of the city, how many inhabitants, but most important, the city has coordinates and might have a height value. So this is geospatial data. Another example, a motorway, also some fields, if it is a taxway or not. And again, geospatial data, coordinates, or even an array of coordinates, because a motorway is most likely a line. So we have 2 types of geospatial data. We want to put them on one map. So this is where web mapping applications define several layers, layer 1, layer 2, layer n. And also for our example, the city can be layer 1, the motorway can be layer 2, with n different layers, and at the end we make some nice editing, we style everything, and we get a map. So what is Cartaro being built of? It relies on PostgreSQL with a PostGIS extension. In the middle, it uses GeoServer as an application server. So GeoServer has a link with your database and is able to serve the data that is inside the database as web services, web map services, web feature services, web coverage services. So actually from GeoServer, if you are on the internet, you can even with a desktop get your data, but in our case we will use open layers, that is a JavaScript library, especially to make maps in web applications. So in the case of Cartaro, we will use open layers to query our data and to build our web application. So if you download Cartaro, it's a Drupal profile. It looks almost the same as the true Drupal, but it has in the profiles in the profiles folder, you will find the Cartaro with a whole bunch of files and folders that contain all the contributed modules for Cartaro, the themes for Cartaro, etc. Now if you want to install Cartaro, you need to do a little bit more than just when you are installing Drupal. You will have to install additional packages. You will, well, I did it always on OpenSUSE, so I didn't test it on other systems. So in this case of OpenSUSE, I had to install PHP 5 GDAL by compiling the code because it was not available as a package. You have to install GeoServer, and then instead of working with MySQL or something else, you have to use PostgreSQL and then enable the PostGIS extensions. And then at the end of this installation, you just install Drupal, but of course the Cartaro flavor of Drupal. So luckily there is a lot of documentation on the website, on the internet. If you want to try it, to install it for your particular system, I'm quite sure that you will find also a lot of solutions for your particular system. So you especially might want to look for the Cartaro website itself, where the installation is fully described, and the other links, they are more particular for Cartaro related to Drupal, and here to install the PostGIS extensions. So how all that fits together. We know content in Drupal, everything is content. And also in Cartaro, you work with content, but your content has one particular field, it's geospatial data. And in Cartaro, there is also a definition of layers. So layers actually, they query data from your content. And they group all that content together. So for example, I could make a layer cities, show all cities that I make. So you can have different layers that are based on different content, but also one layer can contain information of several content together. It just depends on your query. And then you can define a map by combining several layers. Your map can also contain data that is coming from another provider, for example from Google or from OpenStreetMap. And the good thing is, once you define your layers, you can even later, if you add new content, it will automatically show up in your layer, because you defined your query as query from that content type. So if later on you add a new city, it will also show up in your layer. And of course, since you define a map containing several layers, that data will then also show up in your map. So I will show you a small demo how to work with the Cartaro interface to make a geospatial content type, to define a layer and to put that on a map. It's just a copy of the documentation on the Cartaro website itself. So let's give it a try. So this is the Cartaro interface. Just when you install the package and you don't do anything else, then they have a front map, and on that front map you can see all capital cities of the world. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to define a new content type. So I will call it city. It is a city. And then we are going to add the geospatial field. Add new field. So actually this is the location of the city. And then here you have the field type geospatial data. And by default, the widget is a map, because for geographical data, we don't want to show it in a list, but we want to view it in a map. It's already taken location, so I will take something else. Then we are on the settings page of your content type for this field. So you can choose between different geometry types. You have point, which I will choose for this case because we are talking about cities. But if we would have been defining a motorway, I could have taken line string. If you would like to define buildings, then you can choose polygon. And if you want to define even more complex geometries, you can choose multi-point, multi-line string, multi-polygon. And there is even a geometry collection that allows you to combine points, lines, and polygons all within one field. There's also a field for the projection. So the projection is displayed or is defined as EPSG codes. So 4326 is the EPSG code of Google Maps. Well, no, it's actually of the geographical coordinates, but Google Maps also uses the geographical coordinates. So in our case, the points, they will be written in the database referring to geographical coordinates, so latitude and longitude. And then on the last settings page, you can also define for the input widget which map you want to use. So depending on which maps you already defined in your system, you can choose your own map, or you can take some, for example, you could take the Google map. In that case, when you add a new city, you would see a background from Google Map. I will just keep the default map. And there is also this one. So it is actually asking you which control there has to be on the map. So for you to allow to put a new point, I will here select the Open Layers editor, but it could be that you define your own control. For example, that you have your own icon with a hand or something. Then you could also select it in this list. So for this case, I will just take one city per node. You could choose more cities, but then your geometry type should have been multi-point. And again, there is a projection, but we will keep it like this. We save this. Well, and we have a new content type. It's all the time telling me that there is a security update. Then I will define my layer. So I go to Structure, GeoServer, Layers, and I will add a new layer. So the layer title, Cities. And then the layer type, it's a PostGIS field. If you have a style, you can add it here. I don't have a style, so it will be default style. But I have my source, and my source is the city that I just created. And now I ask GeoServer to make a web service from this layer. So this actually means that GeoServer will make a connection with the database. So to always have a link to the cities that I add, to always have a kind of layer online, so that well, once you have the link to the source of GeoServer, you can query that layer from any application. As I said, also from desktop applications, you can query that layer. So GeoServer also asks for projection. There are a lot of things that you can configure, but I will leave them just as they are now. And I just want to take your attention to this one. So actually this is the query that describes the layer. This layer says, give me all content where, well, it is written here, and somewhere there should be voilà, from the content type cities. I will save this. So now I added my content type cities and I have a layer. So what I can do now is add this layer to a map. Therefore I go to structure, open layers, maps, then I have a list with all the maps that are already defined. I can add my own map with my own style, but for this example I will use a map that already exists. I will take the front map and I will edit it so that it also contains our new layer. So I went to layers, and here you have the layer we just defined, cities. I will enable it, activate it, and put it in the switcher, which is a control actually on the map that allows you to toggle on or toggle off different layers. We will save this. Voilà, and now to see actually some result, we go to content, we add content, we add a city, title, Kent, nobody, and I will have to zoom a lot. So this is the default map that I've chosen. So the default map is the OpenStreetMap. Voilà. I take the behavior. So I just selected the open layers behavior. I put a point. Voilà. This is my geospatial data. We have X, Y coordinates. And we save. Voilà. So now I'm just on the node. So this is not the layer, this is not the map, it's just the node itself, where I have a map as widget. But if I go to the home page, which actually is front map in the default installation, you can see that among all these dots we have a yellow dot, and this is the dot we just entered. So far for the demo, using the open layers configuration to make geospatial data, to add it to layers, and to put it on a map. It's also possible to embed maps in your content, but yeah, that will take me too far now, so that's why I just used the front map example. So I go back to my presentation. Some other slide here. Okay. So now I will start the second part of this presentation, where we will dive a little bit more into the code that is making Cartaro. So we have that field type, geospatial data. And well, the module that is providing that field type is the PostGIS module. It is an independent module, but it belongs to the Cartaro distribution. And the field type, the geospatial data field type, actually allows you to store kind of the geospatial data in two ways, as a geometry string and as WKT. WKT means well-known text, and there is an example there. This could be just the city of Ghent that we entered. It is point, and then the coordinates -71, so it's definitely not Ghent, and 42 for X and Y. This is a simple example of WKT, but it can be as complicated or as long as this. Here we have a multi-polygon containing first bunch of coordinates all the way till here, and I omitted a lot of data. It can be as long as you want. And then another polygon starts here and ends here. So this is really interesting because it's very readable, and it allows you to interact with the geospatial data, to add stuff, to remove stuff, to edit stuff. And the good thing is that the PostGIS module has a function. Well, it has a lot of functions, but it one function shows very good how you can access this data. Because if you are on your geospatial data on the field itself and you want to get actually the WKT representation of it, well, there is a function, get items, and then you will have an array that contains the WKT and the geometry. And once you have this, you can populate other fields, you can do string editing, and so on. So how are layers defined in Cartaro? Well, layers are objects, and layer types are classes that define the objects. So, for example, you have layer types that refer to third-party sources, for example, Bing, Google, and you also have the layer type that you were just working with in the previous demo, the GeoServer WFS. So you can actually also define your own layer class by making a new class. And then once you make your new class, you can create new layers as objects from that class. Because the most important thing actually that is responsible for defining these new layers is this query that actually says, okay, for this layer you are going to query all data of entity type this, and you can add other stuff, for example, which has field content such, and then it will return all these contents and put them in your layer. So that's how you can define your own layers by code, just by customizing this query. And this is available, this code is available in the GeoServer module, and the GeoServer module also is part of the Cartaro profile. And then at the end, finally, you have your geospatial data, you have your layers. Then you can also define your own maps in the code, and there is one particular hook that allows you to define new maps. It's the hook open layers maps, and a map is also an object having a lot of properties. For example, what layers do we have in this map? What sources do we have in this map? The source is the place where you get the layer data from. For example, it can be Google, or it can be our GeoServer, for example. That are the sources. You can define your styles for the layers. I want my dots in red. I don't want dots. I want squares, etc. You can define your controls. Controls, for example, the widget to add dots on your map, to zoom in, to zoom out, to pan over your map. You can define your projections. You can make a control that allows you to toggle between different projections. You can define interactions. If I click on this, then you have a pop-up and so on. And there are also a lot of other components that I don't know myself, but so the list is not limited to this. There are more examples. And this is how it looks like, this hook open layer maps. So you can see that if you define a new map, you have to give it a name. The default map that I took here as an example. Then you define these properties. You specify the projection. You tell the system what is the default layer. You tell the map, voila, when you open at first, you will be centered at 0.0. You define a lot of behaviors for this map. You tell the system, okay, I want a zoom bar, I want a layer switcher, I want a navigation control. You specify additional maps that will appear in the layer switcher. So here you can say, okay, I want these OpenStreetMaps, I want an aerial map. And at the end, you can also, if you have defined some styles, you can add them here. So the map knows about them and can take them into account for rendering. And then, just to be complete, when you made a map, of course, you want to print it on your website. Or you could define a map in the configuration. But here we just say, I showed the example within the theme. You call this function open layers map load, where you give the name of your map, and then open layers render map, which is all the magic of rendering this map. For this particular theme, in this case, I think it's the theme example of a node, so it will show the map on this node, at this particular place where you defined it. Okay, so now I will show another demo of a web application that is made with Cartaro. So this is farlap.net. It is entirely built with Cartaro, and actually you can think of it as being kind of a retransfer for maps. So what you can do is selecting your file, which in this case contains geospatial data. So what I have here, I have a KML. I move it to the web application, and as I said, it's developed with the idea of being like a kind of retransfer. So in retransfer, you type a message, you send it to someone. I will send it to myself. Well, now we have to enter who sent it, and then you send it to somebody else. And we save all this. So now the system is actually importing the file, parsing the KML, adding it as a kind of node, content, because I defined that content type, and then making a layer of it, taking the map, putting the layer on the top of the map and rendering this. So what is happening also now in the background, but for this demo it's not that important, so because it's like a retransfer thing, I send the system sends an email with a link, so then the receiver can click on that link and is redirected to this map. So what you can do then additionally with Cartaro is save the map. So here I have to define another control that zooms immediately to my layer. Voilà. And you can add another layer on top of it. So I clicked on add layer. This is again the input map. So it's not my map with the layer on, no, it's actually node add something. And so it asks me to get another file. So I will add some streets. So this is a zip file, but a zip file that contains shapefiles, so .shp, .dbf. I do save, and it's processing again. And I see now here I have two layers. Voilà. Here's the layer switcher. I can ask the system to hide the parcel, only showing the streets, show both. And to conclude the demo, I will add a third layer with some houses, some buildings. So here I didn't zip all this information. You have it all together. So it's a DBF, SHP, projection is also there, SHX. I think these three are mandatory for shapefiles. Now I have all these layers on top of each other. It's good for me that I know where I put my buildings, otherwise it would be difficult to see them. Voilà, here they are. I just put few. It's the campus of where we are now. And for the background layer, I defined two layers: the satellite layer of Google or the OpenStreetMap layer. So this is everything for the demo. Then I go back to the presentation. Slideshow from current slide better. Voilà, so actually these slides, I put them in my presentation in case the demo wouldn't work, so I will skip them because we had a successful demo. Voilà, this is the last slide. So I think my conclusion would like to be that Cartaro really is a fully fledged geospatial content management system. If you have to do complicated stuff with geospatial data, then then choosing Cartaro can be the right thing. It's not just putting a map on a website, because if that's the only thing that you need to do, for example, for this conference, there is also a map of this site on Hogeschool Gent, showing Hogeschool Gent on the website. Then Google Maps and all that other modules, they really do a very good job. But if you really have to manipulate your geospatial data, to make layers of all kinds, to turn maps upside down, then Cartaro is a really good choice. And the good thing is that there is a lot of documentation for installing it, for developing it. And I would like to conclude also just mentioning that Cartaro is available for Drupal 7. So it is based on the PostGIS module, the GeoServer module, and the OpenLayers module. And none of these modules have been ported yet to Drupal 8, but there are, things have been started, there are some issues, but yeah, there's still a long way to go. Drupal 7 will be around for another 5 years, and by that time maybe this project will also have its own Drupal 8 system that is working. Voilà. I thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions? All clear? Okay. Anyhow, yeah.
Do you have experience with other types of geospatial data? You've shown us shapefiles and KML, which are from Google and Esri.
Yeah.
And there is a certain set of other open formats.
Yeah. Well, I never tried them in this system, but so you have JSON, GeoJSON, for example, XML. The XML is kind of KML. It's actually then just about parsing that data. As soon as you imported the data type, get access to the fields, then all the rest can be similar. So for the KML, actually I don't know, but for the shapefile, I use the OGR module, which actually does the parsing. So I think GeoJSON is very popular. It should exist also. Yeah.
And GeoJSON is very readable and so pretty fast for interchanging.
Yeah.
And the GML is for operating and exchanging with older kinds of systems. Since it's XML and most systems, they like to eat XML.
Yeah.
I prefer JSON.
Well, I think it exists, but I don't know. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks again.